So Paul Liu, Chairman of the Organizing Committee, and let me say a few words at the outset to introduce the lecture. The lecture was founded with the view that an open and frank dialogue between the U.S. and China is critical, and the lecture is designed to provide an annual forum where issues in the relationship will be discussed frankly and honestly in an open forum, first by an American speaker and then by a Chinese commentator. The lecture is named in honor of the late Doak Barnett and the late Michel Oksenberg, both American scholars and policymakers of distinction whose writings and actions had a major impact on the bilateral relationship dating back to the 1960s. Doak Barnett was born and raised in Shanghai, the son of a person who ran the YMCA here in the city before the revolution, and was one of the few academic voices in the 1960s calling for a relationship with China, despite the deep differences which existed between the two countries at that time. Doak's influence on American policy toward China as an academic, advisor to government, and a scholar of China was enormous. Michel Oksenberg was Doak Barnett's distinguished student and continued their intellectual line of thinking, eventually serving in the Carter administration's National Security Council and playing a key role in the normalization of relations between the two countries. Both Doak and Mike straddled the world of academia and policymaking, nurturing students and scholars while providing valuable counsel to government and leaders. Both Doak and Mike shared a love of China and its people while not letting this affect their ability for critical and objective analysis and long-term vision. I had the privilege of studying under both Doak and Mike, and I know that many here today also had that privilege. We gather here today to honor them and their contributions to the bilateral relationship. Doak and Mike were men of vision who saw past short-term obstacles and differences and worked for a long-term, realistic, and essentially harmonious relationship. This is something that we all hope for, especially now, and what looks like a challenging year ahead. Each year we choose to have the lecture here in Shanghai for its symbolism, for it was here 40 years ago that President Nixon and Premier Zhou Enlai signed the seminal document in U.S.-China relations, the Shanghai Communiqué, engine for the expanding relationship between our two countries. We are very honored today to have as our speaker the Honorable Ambassador Gary Locke. Steve Orlins and Huang Renwei will introduce the ambassador shortly. I also want to point out that today we have in attendance over 50 students from the Johns Hopkins Nanjing Center at Nanjing University, a place where Chinese and American students study together, taught in Chinese and English, with a focus on Sino-American relations, economics, and politics. We also have 6 students from Concordia School here, a high school here in Shanghai, who are interested in this topic. Doak Barnett was instrumental in supporting the Hopkins program at Nanjing over 25 years ago, and it is yet another legacy he left behind. These students are sprinkled throughout the audience. If you are looking for smart, capable, bilingual, and eager young talent, I encourage business people in the audience to reach out to these young people after the speech in the reception. We would like to thank the Shanghai Office of Foreign Affairs for supporting this event, as well as our sponsors, whose generosity made this event possible. Coca-Cola for their extraordinary generosity this year, Citibank, APCO, Asia Media, and Egon Zender. We'd also like to thank the American Chamber of Commerce for helping to organize this event. I also want to recognize the co-founder of the lecture, my former classmate and retired head of the Shanghai Association of American Studies, Ding Xinghao, for being with us here tonight. So we very much hope that you'll gather some insights from the lecture by Ambassador Locke, the commentary by Mr. Yang Jieman, and the Q&A dialogue from the audience. So thank you all for coming, and I hand over the lectern to Steve Orlins from the National Committee. Thank you.
It's great to see such an enormous gathering here. But the person who Paul didn't thank, of course, was Paul himself, because he has been the driving force for this lecture, and we should all give him a warm round of applause for this. You know, AmCham, and we have Huang Renwei here of the Shanghai Association of American Studies, who's also played a critical role. You know, we should thank Ambassador Locke for coming down tonight, this afternoon, from Beijing. And we were fortunate that the weather turned in our favor and you were able to make it. His appointment represents, I think, a statement by President Obama just how important the U.S.-China relationship is. I was doing some research, and I in fact asked Ambassador Locke, is there an example in American history where a member of the cabinet became an ambassador to a particular country? And I couldn't think of one. And it's really just a reflection of how important President Obama thinks this relationship is. As Paul said, we're gathered here in honor of Mike and Doak. In fact, we have Jean Barnett, Doak's widow, here, so we should welcome her too. And his nephew is here also? James? Where are you, James? Oh, all right. Welcome. Welcome. I had the privilege of knowing both Doak and Mike, and they both played. Doak was a founder of the National Committee on U.S.-China Relations, and both he and Mike played a critical role in the early years. And I had the opportunity of working with Mike when he was on the National Security Council, and I was a very young lawyer in the State Department. You have to imagine that they look down on an event like this and they smile. They say that this is really the values that we taught and the belief that we had in the discussions that should occur between the United States and China. So we at the committee, in our 46th year, are thrilled to be able to co-sponsor this kind of event in Shanghai. And as far as I can tell, it's kind of the only regular lecture in China on U.S.-China relations. So it's terrific, and we're thrilled to continue to sponsor it. So without any further ado, let me turn it over to my very good friend, Huang Renwei, to introduce Ambassador Locke. But thank you all for being here.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my honor to have our ambassador of U.S. from U.S. to China, Gary Locke. Let me give a very brief introduction. Ambassador Gary Locke was from state of Seattle, Washington, Seattle, and you know the state is very famous because of Boeing airplane company and Microsoft company and Starbucks coffee company. So it is, these are very, very famous in China, and with great help of the former governor of the state and the Secretary of Commerce, then the ambassador to China. So now I want to read the resume here. You can read it. I can tell you one more additional secret beyond this paper. That is, Gary Locke's father-in-law was from Shanghai. So he is the son of law of Shanghai. Okay, so now welcome Ambassador Locke for his speech.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Huang Renwei, for the secret introduction for me, and it's really a pleasure to be here. But I do really want to begin by acknowledging so many key individuals and organizations that have been responsible for this long time event and very important event. Professor Wang, of course, represents the Shanghai Association for American Studies, and thank you very much for your tireless work on behalf of U.S.-China relations. Paul Liu, who we heard from earlier, who really kicked off this event, his time, energy, and resources in support of this lecture are a great tribute to the two men for whom this event is named, Mike Oksenberg and Doak Barnett, two of Paul's former mentors. And it's also great to know that Paul calls as his home state in America my state of Washington. And of course, it's really a privilege to have Doak's wife here, Jean Barnett, with us as well. And of course, we cannot overlook the incredible work of the National Committee on U.S.-China Relations, not just for their sponsorship of this event, but their work every single day and every year on behalf of improving perhaps the most critical bilateral relationship in the world today, the U.S.-China relationship. Steve Orlins, who's the president of the organization, Thank you very much for all your work and the conversations we had just walking around the streets of Washington, D.C. I also want to pay special tribute to Jan Barris, who's been around since 1971 on U.S.-China relations, playing a most instrumental role in bringing our two great nations and our two great peoples together. And to all the other many sponsors of this event, today's event, thank you very much for all your contributions to U.S.-China relations. I'm delighted to be here in Shanghai to commemorate the 40th anniversary of the Shanghai Communiqué and to offer a few reflections on the state of U.S.-China relations. Shanghai has always been a very special place for me, and as Professor Wong indicated, my wife's family has its roots here. And Shanghai is the very first Chinese city I ever explored on my very first trip to China in 1988. And I have returned many times since that visit. And each time, I have to adjust my mental image of Shanghai from memories of when bicycles dominated the roads to sights today of a frenetic flow of cars and commerce. Shanghai is no longer the dimly lit city with a low skyline that President Nixon surveyed from his hotel just a few blocks from this place, just some 40 years ago. And it's no longer that same city that I saw even back in 1988. China is not the same country that President Nixon encountered on that historic visit. The Chinese people, through their hard work and determination, have achieved unprecedented economic growth that has lifted hundreds of millions of Chinese out of poverty. And they, along with China's leaders, deserve enormous credit for this success, a success we all applaud and from which we all benefit. And I'd like to state unequivocally that the United States welcomes this transformation. China's economic ascent is good for the people of China. It's good for the people of the United States. It's good for the global economy. And it's critical to creating jobs in America. To put this in tangible terms, in 1972, annual bilateral trade was less than $100 million. And the United States' top export to China was cereal. And China's top export to the United States was animal parts. Two-way investment in each other's markets was close to zero. And only a handful of American jobs relied on trade with China. Now, more than $1 billion of goods and services flow between our two countries every single day. Electronics have replaced cereal as our leading export to China. And machinery and other electronics have taken the place of animal parts as China's top export items to America. 800,000 American jobs depend on producing goods and services sold to China. And even larger number of Chinese jobs are anchored by trade with the United States. Today, the United States is China's largest export market, and China is America's largest export destination outside North America. Annual U.S. exports to China exceeded $100 billion for the first time in 2010, with a 33% increase over 2009. Continuing a trend of exponential growth over the past decade. So people in both our countries are benefiting from this deepening economic integration. Measured against the past and where the relationship has been, our two sides have made enormous progress. But measured against the future and our potential, there is much more progress still to achieve. From where I stand, I believe our bilateral relationship is entering a new phase. During the 1970s and the 1980s, it was a relationship mainly defined by balancing a common foe, with President Nixon coming in large part to enlist China's support in countering the Soviet Union. President Carter shared in that same motivation when he normalized relations 7 years later. But as time passed, and the threat of a common foe receded, our joint efforts turned to fully integrating China into the community of nations. China now has a seat at the table and a role in virtually every institution of importance in the world today. Our shared endeavors in these arenas have benefited both of our countries and have propelled the relationship forward. And to deepen the relationship over the next 40 years, I believe we need to turn our focus towards strengthening bilateral collaboration at all levels to produce tangible benefits for the people of both our countries in jobs, prosperity, and security. Rhetoric alone will not sustain growth in this relationship. Only shared actions that deliver results for the benefit of our people will. President Obama shares this belief, which is why he has consistently stressed the need to ensure that our economic relationship makes it possible for more people in both countries to work, trade, invest, create, and prosper. And we believe that this requires fairness in both policy and practice. By fairness, I mean guaranteeing a level playing field for healthy competition between U.S. and Chinese firms. Fairness also means ending discrimination against U.S. companies, ending unfair trade preferences for domestic firms, ending what we see as unfair, distorting currency practices, improving protections of intellectual property, and establishing a more open investment climate. The United States is responding to Chinese concerns about our own economic practices. For example, inbound investment from China to the United States and export control restrictions on high technology goods. Evidence that we are serious about unlocking the economic potential of our two countries. Inbound investment into the United States is vital to American economic growth, job creation, and productivity. We welcome such investment, but many Chinese firms say that they're reluctant to invest in the United States for fear that their investments will be blocked by the U.S. government, and that all Chinese investment in the United States requires American government approval. But perception is reality. And so the United States is moving beyond just saying that the United States is open to Chinese investment to active promotion. President Obama recently announced Select USA, a government-wide initiative to promote foreign investment in the United States, including from China. Our Foreign Commercial Service is now regularly organizing investment fairs and conferences targeted at attracting Chinese investment. And our embassy has commissioned a short video in Chinese to dispel the false myths and stereotypes about investing in the United States, to highlight the many Chinese companies that have successfully invested in America, and number 3, to list the ingredients for successful investment. It's going to be ready in a month, and we'll be showing it all over China. The reality is that only a small fraction of all foreign investment in the United States from around the world is reviewed by the United States government. In fact, from 2008 to 2010, over a 3-year period, only 300 transactions of the thousands and thousands of transactions involving companies from around the world were reviewed by the United States. And only 5% of those 300 were reviewed by the United States. And of those, very few involved China. Second, my Chinese counterparts often tell me that the United States deficit would be narrowed substantially if only the United States would relax export controls. And I tell them that we're in the midst of a major reform and simplification that will enable more high-tech goods to be exported to China. But to move beyond our talking points, to get beyond the rhetoric, China took a helpful step by providing America with a list of some 141 high-tech items that it wants to purchase from the United States. Now, as a result of our work together, the United States has indicated that some 46 of these technologies can be readily exported to China, and many without even a license. We, of course, need some additional detail on the remaining requested items so that we can determine whether and under what conditions they might also be exported to China. But in the meantime, we're going a step further, also to move beyond the rhetoric and to get some tangible results. So this coming May, we're bringing a delegation of U.S. companies to Shanghai focused on high-tech goods, including items on the list of desired items that Chinese want. And we're going to be meeting with the Chinese companies interested in purchasing high-tech items. And finally, I also know on the issue that the issue of visas matters deeply to the Chinese people and to the Chinese business community, with so many complaints about endless waits for visa interviews. But again, to produce tangible results, to move beyond the diplomatic talking points, we have made a variety of immediate changes that are already bearing substantial results. Speeding up visa processing has been a top priority of me when I was Commerce Secretary, when I was Governor, and now that I'm Ambassador, we've got to do something about it. I've been here in China now for some 7 months, but in the last 5 months, the average waiting time for an appointment for a visa interview has been less than 6 days, compared to 22 days during the same 5-month period last year and 13 days 2 years ago. All this despite a 70% increase in applications, and we've done all of this without any new staff. And it's going to be even more convenient to renew a visa or obtain a visa. Under an initiative that we announced in late January, certain visa applicants who were interviewed for a prior visa are eligible to renew their visas without another interview. Previously, if a person had a visa that expired less than 1 year, another interview was not required. Under the new procedures, an interview is not required if the prior visa expired less than 4 years ago. One can instead simply drop off the renewal application at any CITIC bank. All of this progress on promoting Chinese investment into the United States, reforming exports of high-tech goods to China, reforming and expediting our visa processing procedures demonstrates that America is focused on tangible results and tangible improvements in the U.S.-China relationship. On the security front, as China becomes stronger, its stake in the preservation of global peace and prosperity, from which we both benefit, will naturally rise. The United States looks to more fully partner with China on these security issues. For example, by working together to halt nuclear proliferation, bring Iran into compliance with its international obligations, denuclearize the Korean Peninsula, and promote peaceful developments in Syria, Afghanistan, and Sudan. Doing so will advance our shared goal of fostering global stability, which will in turn enable trade to foster and flourish. As two of the world's largest trading countries, we have a direct interest in expanding efforts to work together for this outcome. We know that China's ascent has sparked debates over whether China's progress threatens U.S. global leadership or whether the United States is working to contain China's rise. These debates ignore reality and distract from what should be an overriding shared objective, producing benefits for the people in both countries. And we must not allow such debates to divide our countries or disrupt deepening habits of cooperation. Let me be clear. The United States does not fear China's growth. It sees China's growth as opportunities. And while some of my Chinese friends have cast America's deepening engagement in the Asia-Pacific in competitive terms, President Obama does not subscribe to such a view. America's growing participation in a full range of economic, humanitarian, educational, scientific, and security-related endeavors throughout the Asia-Pacific is in response to a strong desire from many of the countries in the region for the United States to become more involved. Over time, America's strong and deepening engagement in the Asia-Pacific region will open up new avenues for U.S.-China cooperation, reduce regional anxieties about China's rise, and give other countries the confidence that they need to deepen their own relations with China. The United States recognizes that every country in Asia wants a better relationship with China, and we fully support that. We too seek a strong, constructive partnership with China, and we're working to achieve that. Another source of debate and often misunderstanding has been America's position on human rights. By urging China to protect freedoms enshrined in its own constitution and uphold universal values in accord with its international obligations, the United States is encouraging China to meet the aspirations of its people. We applaud the fact that millions upon millions of Chinese citizens have been able to rise out of poverty, thanks to the dedication of China's leaders and the hard work of its people. But human rights encompass more than improving living standards. They include the right to due process of law, to be able to speak freely, to associate openly, to practice one's religious beliefs, and to enjoy the benefits of a free press. Citizens should have the right to speak openly about their convictions, even if they disagree with the government or hold an unpopular view, a minority opinion. Governments that protect and foster such freedoms and respect religious, cultural, and linguistic differences achieve greater progress in dealing with societal challenges and enjoy greater confidence and support from their citizens. China will not achieve its full potential if it does not ensure the protection of its own citizens' rights. We also know that diversity of opinion and the free flow of ideas has never been more crucial to a country's success than today. The information age, the age of the internet, a time suited for creativity and innovation. In fairness, I must acknowledge that the United States has not always lived up to its ideals. And I remember, for example, when my country imprisoned a leader who challenged America to rise to the principles of its founding. His name was Martin Luther King, Jr., and we now have a monument to him in our capital. Thanks to him and other brave Americans, America is continually being pushed from within to improve itself. The major improvements in civil rights in our own country, from the abolition of slavery to the right of women to vote, to the civil rights movement, the environmental movement, and the advent of new laws that guarantee transparency of governments, did not happen because the United States decided to reform itself from within. These gains came as a result of the efforts of brave citizens and civil society groups who challenged prevailing thought, questioned authority, and demanded that America deal with unflattering truths. And anyone who doubts this need only look at me, the Chinese-American grandson of an immigrant houseboy, or at our president, President Obama, to be reassured of the openness and the ability of self-examination and change that enables American society to thrive. So we will continue to support the advancement of these fundamental freedoms and universal rights in China and to make our views known. It's natural that we will not see eye to eye on every issue, but we must keep discussing our differences openly and committing to develop as many areas of cooperation as possible. Our two countries have steadily moved in this direction over the last 40 years. And our experiences together have shown that when we come together, whether in education, global economic rebalancing, scientific exploration, or global security, our relationship improves along with the quality of their outcomes. I see it when I sit down together with governors and mayors from both of our countries to map out ways to address the challenges of urbanization and economic development. And I see it when I hear from American and Chinese engineers about the progress that they're achieving through collaborative research across a range of fields that is pushing out the boundaries of what is possible and opening up industries that did not even exist last year or even last month. But this is only possible when both sides commit to playing by the rules and sharing equitably in successes. And as we do so, we will move closer to the day when even more of our scientists collaborate to cure diseases and create technologies of the future, when even more of our students engage in exchanges that foster lasting personal relationships, and even more of our business people cooperate to develop better products that fuel innovation and encourage economic growth. The more we're able to bring our two peoples together in common cause, the more we are able to deepen a shared conviction between our two peoples that China's success is good for the United States, and a strong United States is good for China. And that's where the relationship needs to go. But it will not get there without all of your active involvement, support, and encouragement. And so my challenge to you is to actively help build the U.S.-China relationship from the bottom up, rather than waiting for it to be constructed from the top down. Increasing even more the interactions between our executives and entrepreneurs, scientists and scholars, artists and athletes. All of this will enable the benefits of the relationship to multiply and a virtuous cycle to form. We know that such a positive result is possible. Just look at how far our bilateral relationship has come over the past 40 years. But it will require that we not allow inevitable differences in outlook to eclipse the opportunities to advance shared interests, and not allow political winds in either country to push the relationship off track. Neither conflict nor cooperation between us is preordained. It is a choice we make through our actions. All of us in this room share in this common endeavor to build a strong, lasting bilateral relationship that delivers results for both of our peoples. And so I encourage all of you to continue to build bonds across oceans, city to city, question assumptions, defy skeptics who focus on the challenges when opportunities are so much more abundant. If we do so, I'm confident that we will make great strides in unlocking the full potential of our two great countries and in improving the lives of our citizens. This is our challenge, and this is our opportunity. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Locke. I think his speech gave us a very deep, profound thinking with his historical insight, business smart, political balance, and personal wit. Now we have our commentator, President Yang Jianmian from Shanghai Institute of International Studies. Now, please.
Ambassador Locke and Professor Wang, Steve, and Mr. Liu, and ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I was asked to make the comments on His Excellency Ambassador Locke's great speech, but I didn't get the draft until the last minute. So maybe our American friends like me to speak without notes. And it is extremely privileged for me to make the comments at this Barnett-Oksenberg Lecture on Sino-American Relations. When Professor Huang Renwei asked me to make these comments at this lecture, all thoughts came back to my mind with very fond memories of these two late great people who made the contribution in promoting China-US relations. I remembered vividly in 1984 when I was studying at the Fletcher School and had the summer vacation in Washington, D.C. At that time, Professor Doak Barnett helped me to have a library card at the size for my independent studies. And our last encounter was in 1996 and 1997. He and a group of very famous scholars and experts came to China. They met with President Jiang Zemin in Beijing first, and then came down to Shanghai for the discussions on Taiwan issue. At that time, everybody knows the context. And I'm also knowing that many of us who have met with late Professor Oksenberg, but perhaps I belong to a small privileged people who spent a few days at his home in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And that was spring 1984. He took his dog and walked in the small, quiet street talking about the Super Bowl and how to keep the channels with the government on policy advice. So there are many, many more stories, but I have to stop here. And I also remembered when President Nixon came to visit Shanghai 40 years ago. I was a farmer. I didn't realize that Nixon's trip would have made my life and my later organization, the Shanghai Institute for International Studies, Shanghai and China, to have such profound changes. And again, I think the 8 presidents of the United States and 4 generations of Chinese leadership, they all have kept their consistent leadership and pursuance for a stable and beneficiary and cooperative relations between our 2 countries. And in 1986, Ambassador Winston Lord came to the Shanghai Institute for International Studies for a roundtable talk. He was talking about the 4 T's of China-US relations at that time. That's Taiwan, textile, Tibet, and trade. But now our relationship has far exceeded the bilateral nature and covering the regional, interregional, and the global affairs. And in order to present my comments on Ambassador Locke's great speech, I think he has done a great job to sum up the past 40 years and talking about the current achievements, difficulties, differences, as well as try to tap the potential for another 40 years and beyond. So I would like to, again, use 4 T's to say my comments on China-US relations. The first T is transformation. The transformation of our minds, the transformation of the physical looking of Shanghai and the whole China, and transformation of our attitudes, our ways, and our understandings of each other. And then, more importantly, being 2 very important powers in the world which shoulder the great transition of international system. The second T is transition of international system. For the first time in the past 360 years, the global, the world, the international system had the first chance since Westphalia that it's like and possible that we could have this peaceful transition. That is why Ambassador Locke emphasizes China's growth is good for the United States, for the world, vice versa. And it is also very clear both of the leaderships are working on the institution building, organization building, meeting of minds, and there are more than 60 mechanisms between our two countries at the central and the federal level for regular and in-depth discussions. And it also transcending the changes of administrations in the United States. And this transition also has a profound impacts on not only on our common interests, but also common value. Of course, China is a country of more than 5,000 years of civilization. We have our own mainstream spirits, civilization, cultures, which are not necessarily the same with the United States. Neither country will give up our mainstream civilization, cultural values. But now there is a possibility for the newly emerged challenges and our joint efforts to deal with it, like our joint efforts during the financial crisis. A kind of pattern of cooperation and collaboration emerged, such as the spirit of the same boat and the behavior of prior, during, and post-event consultation, just like the G20, WB, and IMF, etc. And the third one is very important. T is tangible for the present and the future. Ambassador Locke illuminated a lot of great figures and facts that the China-US relations are concrete, are here, tangible for the benefits of our two people in particular and the world in general. If I quote just this line, you can see Ambassador Locke's words almost the same as Hu Jintao's. So here we have the meeting of minds, and it is very important for ambassador to focus on the economic, trade, commercial, and other businesses, because Shanghai is that of kind of cities. The other day, I met with another great scholar on China, David Lampton, and I was telling him the spirits of Shanghai and the spirits of Beijing. I said that the spirits of Beijing is inclusive, patriotism, creativity, and virtue and morality. And the spirits of Shanghai, only one overlapping, that's inclusive. Then responsibility, credibility, etc. And Professor Lampton said, oh, the spirits of Shanghai almost the same as the spirits of the middle class in the United States. Actually, the spirits of the two cities have the features of the twin cities. Beijing is political. Shanghai is practical. The last T is talks. As for the differences between us, how can we do it? Again, I remembered one American friend told me he believed human rights, democracy, so on and so forth. But he said to me, I'm here not to debate with you, but I want to reason with you. This is also why our Vice President Xi Jinping said in the United States that in the matters, on the matters of human rights, democracy, etc., there is never a best, but a better. It reminds me when my first English class, I try to learn the rhyme. Good, better, best. Never let it rest until better is the best. So let our two countries work together for the betterment of the human rights of our both countries, for the world, and for a very bright future. Now, maybe I have one question to start with the discussion. Now, the United States is in the political season for the presidential campaign, and China is a political year also for generational change of the leadership. So for this, how, Your Excellency, the United States would do its part to stabilize the situation for the possible betterment and advancement of China-US relations. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Yang Jimian, and you made equally profound comment on the speech of Ambassador Locke. Now we open floor to the questions and answers. Oh, first one. Yeah, please.
Good afternoon. The Honorable U.S. Ambassador to China, Gary Locke. My question to you is very straightforward. In terms of international law and principles, which should prevail? For example, the Taiwan Relations Act or the Shanghai Communiqué regarding U.S. arms sales to Taiwan. Meantime, to my best knowledge, the U.S. bill of H.R. 4105 regarding applied countervailing duty provisions to NME countries, mainly against China, was introduced in U.S. House of Representatives on March the 2nd. 3 days later, Senator approves equivalent bill by unanimous consent. The next day, on March 6th, House of Representatives passes H.R. 4105 by overwhelming margin, 370 to 39. And March the 7th, Senate formally passes H.R. 4105 and sends to President for signature. My question is that... Yeah, yeah. My question is very simple. Once President Obama signed the bill and it will become the law, do you think which prevails, the domestic law or U.S. international commitment, for example, WTO? Thank you.
Well, let me just say that the United States, in passing its laws, tries very much to conform to international law. And much of our, for instance, on our economic front, the laws that we have in America are within the discretion and within the overall framework of international law. Let me just say with respect to the countervailing duties case, the legislation that was passed very quickly and overwhelmingly by the United States Congress, the House and the Senate, was to correct a ruling by our U.S. courts, which said that it was not clear that the United States Congress had given the Commerce Department the authority to impose countervailing duties on products that were entering into the United States at below normal market prices if they came from a non-market economy like China, Vietnam, and many other countries. And it was not saying that we had violated the WTO or international law. What the court had said was that it was not clear that the Congress ever intended for the Commerce Department to be able to impose those countervailing duties. That it was not clear that Congress had ever wanted the Commerce Department to do so. So the United States Congress said, well, that's exactly what we meant many years ago. And if we were not clear about it, we will make it clear right now. So what it did was to reaffirm the ability and the authority of the Commerce Department to impose those countervailing duties, which the Commerce Department has long been doing for many, many years without any complaint by the WTO or any other organization. So what we were trying to do there is to be consistent with international law, but to make it clear what the United States Congress has all along intended. So thank you. All right.
Okay. The second question? Oh, Xia Liping. Yeah, introduce yourself first.
Thank you. Xia Liping from Tongji University. I enjoy Ambassador's speech very much. I have a question. Since last year, Obama administration has been pursuing the policy of Asia pivot or re-engaging Asia, strengthening the defense allies in Asia, and also strengthening the military forward presence in Asia, which many Chinese people are very concerned about. So in your opinion, how can the United States and China make a great effort to avoid to be involved in a security dilemma, so the two countries can cooperate not only in economic field, but also in security field? Thank you very much.
Well, let me just say that the President's announcements of further focus, additional focus on Asia, is something that in many cases was requested by many of the countries within Asia. And for instance, the announcement of the joint training exercises with Australia has long been talked about, has actually been talked about for many, many years. It comes as no surprise, no secret. Very much requested by the Australian government. The collaboration with the government of Philippines goes back many, many years. And a lot of this training exercises is merely an opportunity to help strengthen the preparedness of all of our militaries within the region, especially when we join together to respond to natural disasters or acts of terrorism, whether it's within the South Pacific or other parts of the world, or even piracy off the coast of Africa. But more importantly, the United States very much wants a stronger relationship military to military with China. And that's why, for instance, when Vice President Xi Jinping was in the United States just a few weeks ago, he was given a great welcome at the U.S. Pentagon and had high-level meetings with our Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta. And in fact, Secretary Bob Gates, the most previous Secretary of Defense, came to China just last year. And we've had many other high-ranking U.S. government military officials visiting China. And we very much want high-ranking Chinese military officials to visit the United States. It's in our mutual economic and strategic interest to have greater collaboration, greater understanding of the intentions, desires, and objectives of each side so that there never can be miscalculations or misunderstandings. As Vice President Biden said during his visit here in China last August, and even Vice President Xi reminded and remembered what Vice President Biden had said. And what Vice President Biden said was something that he said his father told him, that what is worse than an intended conflict is an unintended conflict. And Vice President Xi remembered that and quoted that back to Vice President Biden. So we need our military leaders at the highest levels all the way down to the mid-levels to engage in more cooperation, collaboration, and partnership so that we can avoid miscalculations and misunderstandings.
Bernard Gio Xavier from the Hopkins Nanjing Center for Chinese and American Studies. On that vein, when we're talking about collaboration and cooperation for international peace and security, how can issues such as Syria either strain or improve? What kind of implications can it have on U.S.-China relations in regards to the UN Security Council and trying to tackle similar issues together? Thank you.
Well, there are going to be differences in approach, but I don't think that we have a difference in viewpoint. And I think the Chinese government, as well as the U.S. government, has expressed repeatedly its concern for the violence occurring within Syria and condemning that violence and wanting a peaceful resolution and allowing for self-determination within Syria. We in the United States, of course, believe that the regime has lost its legitimacy and China, I know, that has made its views known with respect to condemning the violence within Syria. But when you really look at so many other issues, there is a great deal of cooperation between China and the United States, whether it's the issues of Sudan, and China was very instrumental in trying to help forge peace and a political settlement in Sudan. The United States and China have worked very well together and long on fighting global terrorism, trying to halt nuclear proliferation, whether it's in Iran or on the Korean Peninsula, and China chairs the six-party talks. And so really we need to build on those successes and those many, many, many efforts that oftentimes are not known to the public. There may be differences in strategy. There may be differences in how we approach things, but I think that there is actually a lot more collaboration and commonality than most people think.
Professor Song, introduce yourself.
Chuan Jianzong from Shanghai University. I have two questions.
Only one.
Oh, only one. So I have to omit the last one because but I mentioned it in New York, in Washington. I asked your Assistant Secretary Kim Moy. I asked him to convey you my question because here you mentioned that too. That is, you in your presentation you have a thinly veiled criticism of China's human rights. You are right that human rights not only including the improvement of people's living, but also the respect of freedom of speech and so on and so forth. In other occasions, you said China's human rights deteriorating or worsening. Here you didn't say that directly. Do you still have that assessment of the China's human rights? Thank you.
Well, the reason I wanted to talk a little bit about human rights is that, and I very much applaud and am in awe of the hard work and determination of the people of China, the businesses of China, for all that they have done to raise the standard of living for the people of China. Because I think back to our family village in Guangdong province, and I had an occasion to go back there in 1997 after I was governor. And this was a village just about 2 miles from a city of millions of people in Guangdong province. And as we visited the homes, it was like stepping back into the 1800s and seeing the conditions in this family village of about 150 people where the Locke clan came from. And they didn't have toilets in any of the homes. They still cooked with a lot of some electricity, but also kindling and coal. And it was like, it impressed upon me the fact that, you know, appliances, the standard of living for many people of China is much lower than the United States and even much lower than many parts of the rest of China, because almost 50% of the people in China live in the rural areas. And there's not that much refrigeration, and so there's a lot of spoilage of food, and obviously they don't have the comforts of the people in the cities of China. And so, and yet if you look back at the standard of living 50, 60 years ago, even 40 years ago, it's been an incredible transformation of China. And China should be proud of what it has done on behalf of the people here in China. So many hundreds of millions of people have been lifted out of poverty. And there's more access to medical care and better social services. So yes, the standard of living for the people of China has improved dramatically, but that's not how we in the United States define human rights. That's part of it. But we also look at what we consider universal values of human rights, values that even China has enshrined in its own constitution and its own laws. But these are also universal rights of, for instance, just fairness in the court system. Fairness in the court system, where laws and decisions are made free of outside influence, and where wisdom is the overriding value as the judges make various decisions. Just the ability for people to practice religions or to speak their mind. They don't have to be the majority opinion. We oftentimes know that people in America who speak out, or even the people in China who may speak out, may not hold the majority view. But what we believe in America is that it's okay to have that discussion, even if nobody else agrees with you. It can't hurt to challenge one's mind and to challenge one's assumptions. So that is why I wanted to speak a little bit about human rights today, to indicate that our view of human rights is more than just raising the standard of living for the people of China. And again, I salute the leaders of China and the people of China for the incredible transformation of China over the last several years. Every time I come back to China, before I became ambassador, I've been in constant awe at the progress here. But I really believe, and we in many places, and we in America, and people in many other countries around the world believe that China's fullest potential will be reached if it respects the rights of its citizens.
Okay. To be more balanced, I need the American friend to raise questions. Are you American friend?
Hi, I'm Winnie Tong. I'm from the Hopkins Nanjing Center, and I'm also Yale class of 2011. I was wondering if I could ask a more personal question to the Honorable Ambassador Gary Locke. How do you feel that your Chinese-American background may have affected your work and provided challenges during your time in China? And if so, how have you overcome them? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm asked that quite frequently. Let me just say that I grew up in a Chinese household, Chinese immigrants. A little history about our family. My grandfather came to the United States in the late 1800s and worked as a servant for a family in the state of Washington in exchange for English lessons. He washed dishes, helped cook meals, swept the floors in exchange for English lessons. He came back to China and got married, had a family. So my father was also born here in China, Guangdong province. My grandfather came back to the United States and worked, and like so many Chinese immigrants, sent the money back to China to support the family. And then later on, he came back to China and brought my dad and my aunts and uncles back to the state of Washington. So my dad came to the United States when he was around 13 years old, learned English himself, joined the United States Army before the outbreak of World War II, and was part of the Normandy invasion and part of the march to Berlin. after the war was over, he went to Hong Kong and met my mom, who was born in Hong Kong, and they got married, and then came straight to the state of Washington. And so I and my brothers and sisters were born in the state of Washington, in Seattle, Washington. We grew up with Chinese values. Every year my dad was sending money back to the family village. And when I finally went back to the family village in 1997, I understood why. And it was a realization that our success in America as Chinese, our clan, the extended Locke family, was made possible by the sacrifices and the contributions of not just the Locke family, but all the people of the village, who always pooled their money together to send immigrants to America. And that I owed my success not just to my mother and father and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles, but to all the people of the village. My dad was always taking care of immigrants from Guangdong province, from Toisan, and finding them furniture, helping them get jobs, helping them get situated. We were raised on the Chinese values of work hard, get a good education, and take care of each other. And growing up, I had some problems understanding and trying to balance Chinese values and traditions and American customs. But let me just say that I am proud of my Chinese heritage, proud of the contributions that China has made to thousands of years of civilization, the inventions of the compass, the clock, the printing press, paper, gunpowder, you name it, all the different philosophies. But I'm also proud of the contributions that America has made over the last several hundred years, from the great industrialization to incredible products to engineering, scientific and medical breakthroughs, to our freedoms and to our values. Why is it that millions and millions of people from around the world have come to America? They've come to America in search of freedom, hope, and opportunity. And our family story is the story of really America. My story and our family story is not unique. It is the story of virtually every family in America, because whether we're first generation or 10th generation, we are all in America immigrants, except for the Native Americans. We are all immigrants. And so I have that great sensitivity toward the immigrant experience, and that has guided me in all of my decisions as governor and when I was in elected office. But being an American of Chinese ancestry, I want to bring our two countries together. I really want us to collaborate together so that the history books will say 100 years from now, it was China and the United States collaborating together on science and technology that really solved so many of the problems facing the entire globe, whether it's climate change, to disease, to famine. We have great scientists and great engineers and great people in both of our countries. We need to bring them both closer together and our governments closer together so that we solve not just the challenges of America and not just the challenges of China, but the challenges of the world. The fact that I really don't speak Mandarin, I think, is actually a good thing. Because I know that when I was appointed as ambassador, a lot of people said, oh, here's a person of Chinese ancestry. He will be an advocate for China. You know, I represent the President of the United States of America. I am here as the representative of America to China. My predecessor, Ambassador Huntsman, spoke beautiful Mandarin. But you knew that he represented America because he was Caucasian. All right? There was no question in your minds that he represented America. Because I am of Chinese face, there's no question that I represent America because I don't speak Mandarin. I may speak a little bit of Cantonese and Toisan, but I very much want to build our relationships between the United States and China, government to government, people to people, business to business. Thank you. I don't know how many of you speak Cantonese, so I don't know if you understood what I said at all. But
Okay, Honorable Ambassador, I'm Zhang Yadong from Center for American Studies at Fudan University. My question is related to one point you mentioned during your lecture. You said the U.S. doesn't fear China's rise. I found a lot of American officials have stated the same or similar arguments as you. So I know maybe U.S. has no any reason to fear China because China is still weak. But my question is related to it. It is because U.S. believes China would never rise to a level can threaten United States, or because U.S. believes China would never threaten China, even China owns this capability, is my question.
well, no, we do not fear China's rise, because we welcome China's rise. We welcome the greater prosperity of China, but we also want China to assume greater responsibility in international affairs that is commensurate with and equal to its rise. And we're very pleased that China is involved in so many different international organizations, as Professor Yang mentioned in his 4 T's. We welcome China's rise and China's prosperity. It is actually in our economic self-interest, because the more that China raises the standard of living for the people of China, the more Chinese middle class that there are, the more goods that they'll want from the Western world, whether medical devices, Western medicine, to food, to the products that we make in America. And the greater the economic resources of China, the greater the ability to hire engineers and architects from America, or engineers to help clean the rivers and streams and the air of China. So we see opportunities for American companies to sell their highly valued products and services to China with a growing prosperity in China. That, of course, means that will result in jobs in America. So it's in even our economic self-interest to have a thriving, prosperous, rising China. But we want one that China that also takes on greater responsibility in the international order. And we're beginning to see that. China chairs the 6-party talks with respect to the North Korea issue. China is involved in the UN, of course, as a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, and has helped with a lot of issues throughout the world, including conflicts in Africa. China is involved in trying to halt piracy off the coast of Africa. We welcome all of these. So let me just say that we know that China wants to see a strong economic recovery in America, because that is also in the economic self-interest of China, given all the financial problems in Europe and exports to Europe falling off dramatically. And so China wants very much for the United States recovery, economic recovery, to be strong and to be quick. So again, we want to work with China. And there are so many issues facing not just China and the United States that would benefit from our collaboration and partnership, but so many problems that the world faces as well.
Thank you for your speech, Ambassador Locke. My name is Manny Pena. I'm a master's student at the Hopkins Nanjing Center. You mentioned in your speech that the U.S. has been a long time proponent of a liberal international trade order. And it came to my mind, rather, I was thinking, as an architect or an author of so much of this existing international economic institutional infrastructure, we have an interest in ensuring that this remains like a free community of willing actors engaging in trade negotiations, looking for a more liberal way forward. Now, Taiwan, a longtime friend and trade partner of the United States, or otherwise known as Special Customs Territory of Taiwan, Penghu, Kinmen-Matsu, in the WTO, faces barriers consistently stemming from mainland Chinese pressure with regards to entering trade negotiations with its partners. How does the U.S., as a proponent of this trade order, and a friend of Taiwan's, how does it ensure that Taiwan and other small member economies, as equals or as full members of the WTO, equals with China, how do we ensure that they enjoy the full rights of this membership and they're not denied this freedom because of pressure stemming from big, powerful countries such as China?
Well, let me just say that we very much believe in a rules-based trading system, international rules-based trading system, and China has actually benefited from its ascension to the WTO and therefore this international rules-based trading system. We believe that all countries should be able to compete and be part of this rules-based trading system and compete fairly on equal terms. And whether that's Chinese companies in the United States or US companies here in China or European companies here in China. That's why, for instance, we are looking at even more high standards trading regimes like the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is a voluntary association, and any country is free to join, including China, in the TPP, or the Trans-Pacific Partnership. We're working very hard to make sure that it meets the needs of this 21st century global economy, which is really centered on innovation, creativity, and scientific research and innovation, which means strong protections of intellectual property rights. And Taiwan is considering joining that, and it is free to do so. So we're trying to make sure that there are many other mechanisms by which any country in the Pacific region can join. But again, we very much believe that there needs to be a level playing field for all participants and all countries who are part of these agreements. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we have the last question. The other side, Tsai. Okay, last question for you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Locke. It is my great honor to listen to your speech today here. I have a question because China, US is the founder of the internet, and China has the largest population of internet users. And last year, President Obama put forward the international strategy for cyberspace, and I noticed that you also made a comment on that. So my question would be that, what kind of challenges and opportunities do you think that internet can bring for the US-China relations? Thank you.
Well, I think that the internet is an incredibly powerful force for exchange of ideas, but also for commerce. When you really look at what's happening, let's say in the United States, people in the United States are making purchases over the internet like never before. Billions and billions of dollars are being purchased, of goods are being purchased over the internet. Companies are entering into transactions with each other using the internet. It's a matter of convenience and of great choice. It especially allows companies that might not be able to market, don't have the money to engage in a lot of advertising or marketing, to sell their products and services to all parts of the world. Let's say you're a small little artist, or you have a little, what we call a bed and breakfast, small little hotel in the rural parts of a particular state. You can market your services not just to people in your own community. You can now market your products, services, your artware, your pottery, your glass work, or your own hotel to people in other parts of the world. So you're able to perhaps attract more business. I think this really has great potential for people in developing countries who then don't have to rely on middlemen to sell their products and services and to earn a living. I also believe that between China and the United States, with the growing number of engineers and people who are skilled in technology, applications can be developed that can meet the needs of people in China, the United States, and indeed around the world. And it's a huge growth market and a source of jobs, good paying jobs for people all around the world, including China and the United States. I think just on a personal note, from my background as Secretary of Commerce, I think that the full potential of the internet cannot be realized unless people know that they can trust it, that they have privacy, that their privacy is protected. And we in the United States are working very, very hard to make sure that it's easy to verify your identity and to get onto the internet using trusted identities so that people don't have to have all these different passwords that you are constantly forgetting depending on which entity you're working with. You know, you have how many different bank accounts and health records. You got to remember all these passcodes and you're losing them. So we're trying to come up with a simplified trusted identity system. But more than anything, the public's confidence in the internet will never be at its fullest unless companies that use information and disseminate information over the internet can guarantee that the information that consumers and customers use and share is private, that it will not be used for other purposes or other commercial purposes and not sold or released without the individual or consumer's knowledge. So the internet is an incredible opportunity for idea sharing, for discussion, and we in the United States very much believe that there should be that free flow of information, unrestricted discussion using the internet. It's a way to bring people together, to bring families together, to share, and even pictures of babies and weddings, and a way of communicating with each other. And look at on the internet, the grandmas and grandpas can see their grandchildren and talk to their grandchildren and by Skyping and communicating all around the world. And so we believe in the great potential of the internet to simply bring people together, to bring people closer together. And we also believe that the internet has great potential for commerce and to enable people in even the remotest villages around the world to sell their wares and their products to people in other parts of the world that they might not otherwise. And we also know that there are many challenges to the internet, and that full realization of the potential of the internet will not occur unless issues of privacy are addressed.
Okay. Last question is reserved for our longtime friend, Jen Burns.
Thank you, and thank you, Ambassador, for a wonderful speech. You just spent about a week traveling around the United States with Vice President Xi Jinping. So I'd like to know a tripart question here. How you thought the trip went, how you think he thought it went, and what you think. I was going to ask you for any anecdotes that we might not know, but given the press, I'm sure they got all the best anecdotes. So what, for you, was the best part of the trip? And what do you think for him was the best part of the trip? Other than traveling with you.
Too much questions.
Well, I think the trip was enormously successful. It gave U.S. policymakers an opportunity to spend a lot of time interacting with Vice President Xi and to learn more about him in terms of the individual, the person. And I think that he very much enjoyed the trip. He was able to have very long conversations, much longer than had been planned, with Vice President Biden and certainly President Obama, and even with the leaders at the Pentagon. I think the American public was able to see a very human side of Vice President Xi. I'm thinking back to the luncheon that he had with the business community, and in which he talked about how he read a story in the newspaper about a gentleman who was raised in China by missionary parents and had always wanted to go back to visit the village in which he grew up for many years of his early life. But because of his frail health was never able to do that. And then after he passed away, his wife wanted to visit that village that her late husband constantly talked about. Vice President Xi read about that account in a newspaper, and he made arrangements for that widow to be able to come to the Chinese village and to see where her late husband grew up. He didn't have to do that. He just read about it in a newspaper and reached out to an American and help one American person's dreams come true. I also saw that his interaction with the farmers in Iowa and his interaction was very genuine. He was asking questions about, what is life like? How do you do shopping? You're far from the big cities of shopping malls and stores. What do you do if the price of your crop one year is very, very low? So he took a genuine interest in the people in Iowa. So I think that certainly from the American government's perspective, we had a good visit with Vice President Xi. We were able to talk on a full range of subjects very openly and candidly. And I saw in Vice President Xi a very relaxed individual who was reaching out to the people of America. So I think, I can't speak for him. I don't know how he viewed the trip, but I hope he felt the great hospitality of the American people. I'm hopeful that he believes that there's even greater possibilities for stronger people-to-people relations, and that we have a great opportunity for collaboration between the people, the government, and the businesses of America and China, two great countries, and that together we can solve just about any problem that the world faces. Thank you.
So, great thanks to Ambassador Locke and his answer and all the questions raised by our audience are so full of thinking, witness, and also I think all the audience paid great attention to your speech and made great efforts to understand what you insight in the speech. So your speech also shows that how much hard working of both sides, from Chinese side, from US sides, we try our best to keep this relationship moving on the healthy track, and how much we need the new thinking of strategy, the long-term historical perspective, and how much we need the common interest, common values, and how much we need conclusive development of our both two great countries. So at last, I should pay our great thanks to American Chambers of Commerce in Shanghai, thanks to the sponsors, Coca-Cola and EPCO and Citibank and Asia Media, Egon Zander, I'm sorry, International. And I should say great thanks to National Committee of US-China Relations. Jim Barris sent every night email to me. And Paul Liu made efforts to communicate with all sides. So made this forum 1 year after another and more successful. So I think we will meet next year. And this also we should thank Madame Barnett fly from New York, and your contribution to this forum is valuable. Okay, so I should say thanks, and there is the reception in the lobby, and all of you is welcomed. It's a very simple reception. Thank you.